So how much better can LSU's defense be in 2025? We're talking about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. I was asked a question coming out of SEC football media days about how much better I think LSU's defense can be in year two under Blake Baker. So I thought, okay, well, instead of just throwing out maybe some random, slightly defined ideas, let me see if I could take a deep dive into this and see where this might go. I think one of the more commonly held opinions about year two under Blake Baker is people looking at what he did at Missouri in his two seasons, from year one to year two. So I'll go through this. And I want to, first of all, very candidly tell you, we're going to go through today is a lot of numbers. And I know numbers, if I'm not showing you graphs and charts, tend to bore people. It tends to be confusing. What I really want to underscore is you don't need to memorize any of this. Okay. There's not going to be a test on this later. You don't need to take notes. It's just going to be numbers that'll illustrate why I think it's logical to assume LSU will have a pretty significant step forward defensively in 2025. So, for example, this is one of the things you commonly hear about Blake Baker. Blake Baker went to Missouri after the 2021 season. In 2021, Missouri's defense was awful. They were 113th in points per game, 106th in total defense. Sound familiar? Very comparable to LSU in 2023, but we'll get to that in a second. So again, they were 113th in the country in points per game, 106th in total defense. Year one under Blake Baker, they improved to 56th in scoring, 33rd in total defense. They went from 113 to 56, 106 to 33. That was in the first year. In his second year, scoring defense went all the way up to 25th in the country. So from 56 to 25th, and total stayed about where they were, 33rd in 2022, 34th in 2023. So again, from 1/3 in scoring, 113 to 56 to 25. In total, 106 to 33 to 34. So dramatic improvement under Blake Baker year one, and even better in year two. You look at where LSU was in 2023. Very comparable to what Blake Baker inherited at Missouri. We all remember the 2023 defense, literally the worst defense in LSU history. That's not hyperbole. No defense on record allowed more points and yards than 2023 LSU. It was atrocious. They were 108th in the country in total defense, and they were 86th in scoring at 29.5 points per game. That 23 defense was 118th in pass defense, 87th against the run. Okay, so understand it was all bad. That's just adding illustration to what we know. 2023 LSU was atrocious. Well, year one under Blake Baker saw a very similar rise that you did at Mizzou in year one under Blake Baker. So in total, LSU went from 108 to 61. They went in scoring from 86 to 53rd. Just to add some color to that, they went from 29.5 points per game to 24.5 points per game. So they improved by 5 points per game. That's significant. Pass defense went from 118 to 76. Rush defense went from 87 to 51. So across the board, you were better. Across the board, you were better. And most notably in total defense from 108 to 61. Look, if LSU had the defense in 2024 they had with if the 2024 defense was there in 2023, LSU's a college football playoff team because they certainly beat Ole Miss in the game in Oxford. And who knows what happens maybe in that game against Alabama. Jaden Daniels got concussed. It might not have changed anything, but maybe you win the opener against Florida State. So all that to say, you saw, even though it wasn't great in 2024, you saw a dramatic improvement in year one under Blake Baker. So now the logical question is, can you make the same improvement from year one to year two under Baker that Missouri did when they went from 113th to 56th to 25th? Because I'm here to tell you, if LSU can find a way into the top 30 nationally in scoring defense, then I think LSU will certainly be a playoff team and will be able to make a strong run toward a national championship. So how do they then make that jump from year one to year two under Blake Baker? That's what I want to get to as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If maybe there's a certain financial goal you have, maybe it's get out of debt, maybe it's to buy that new house, or you're looking to buy a new vehicle, Monarch Money can help you get there. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So we've established that Blake Baker took over a terrible situation at Missouri, dramatically improved year one, improved even further year two. Baker takes over a terrible defensive situation at LSU, dramatic improvement year one. Still not a great defense, but still a dramatic improvement. One of the analogies I gave, and forgive me if this is crude, but it's like if you have someone that, let's say, is like morbidly obese, you weigh 400 pounds. Well, you lose 100 pounds, well, you're still a large person, but that's a dramatic improvement. Now the key is going from like 215 to 195 and firming up, right? Like that's the sort of the explanation if you're looking for sort of an analogy of how much better this LSU can be, the defense can be. They don't need to be Mr. Universe. They don't need to go doing like fitness competitions. They just need to be good enough to complement what we think is going to be a really good offense. So how do you do that? Well, let's look at the leaders from LSU in 2024. Unfortunately, you are losing 6 of your top 10 tacklers. That on its face is something that is a bit disappointing. However, you are the 4 players that you're returning. Whit Weeks, who was your leading tackler a year ago by a wide margin. Jordan Gilbert, who played last year at safety with one shoulder. Remember, Jordan Gilbert transferred in from Texas A&M, has played a ton of football, from Baton Rouge, went to U-High, went to Texas A&M, transferred to LSU, dislocated his shoulder early in the season, played the entire season with basically one arm. He had off-season shoulder surgery, which is why he missed spring ball. So now you get Whit Weeks back, who had 125 tackles. By the way, Greg Penn was next with 86. So you're talking about a guy who had 40 more tackles than the next closest on the team. So Weeks is back. Gilbert, who is 4th on the team with 55 tackles, is back and is healthy. Ashton Stamps is back, who is next at 51. And then Devon Keys, who is 9th on the team in tackles, is back with 30. He had 31 tackles and, really played well at the end of the season, is likely going to slide into that role that Greg Penn had. So is it plausible to think that with an increased snap count, someone like Devon Keys can go from 31 tackles to matching what Greg Penn did at, say, 86? So you have really your 1-2 combo there at linebacker. And Jordan Gilbert is in a dogfight for his job. More on that in a second. Because not only is it important that you're getting some of those leaders back, but it's more, I would say, about the additions that you have on this defense. We all have talked about the 18 transfer portal ads that LSU has. But How do the guys they've added compare with the guys they've lost at those positions? Let's start with what is probably the most important position that they're replacing, and that's defensive end. Because Braden Swinson and Savion Jones were really good for you a year ago. Braden Swinson had 58 tackles, 13 TFLs, and 8.5 sacks. Remember, there was a point in the season where Braden Swinson was pacing to break the LSU single-season sack record. So he's gone. Well, who replaces him? Look at the most productive defensive end that you got out of the portal of the three: Peyton, Pyburn, and Jamari Butler. Well, Patrick Peyton in 2023 had 14.5 TFLs, 7 sacks. This last year in 24, 11 TFLs and 4 sacks. So the production was off a little bit in 24, but we know he's in there. It's in there for him. The skins are on the wall there for Patrick Peyton. So you would assume very little, if any, drop off going from Swinson to Peyton. And then Savion Jones, the big end, 40 tackles, 7.5 TFLs, 4.5 sacks. Jack Pyburn comes in, and he was a set-the-edge run defender with 60 tackles. He's told us point blank his objective is to go from being an effective pass rusher, his words, an effective pass rusher to an elite pass rusher. So you replace Jones with a true senior, a fourth-year player in Jack Pyburn. And by the way, you also have Jamari Butler coming in, who's a 6-year player from Nebraska, and you're returning Gabe Relaford, who's outstanding for you a season ago as a true freshman. Relaford finished last year, his freshman season, with just 10 tackles, but played in all 13 games for you as a good rotational player. Looks to take that step. That's the most productive players you're going to have to replace on defense. Your weakest link on defense a year ago was safety. It's something we talked about ad nauseum all season. And LSU started the season with a very healthy rotation. Guys like Deshaun Spears and Javen Toviano, those guys were getting reps back there along with the veterans, Jordan Gilbert, Sage Ryan, Major Burns, etc. And my feeling at the beginning of the season was by the end of the year, you could see a situation where the young guys overtook the veterans because the younger guys were more talented. After about a month, Brian Kelly and Blake Baker decided, you know what? Let's just run the experienced guys out there. Sage Ryan, Jordan Gilbert played safety, Major Burns played star, and then it was Stamps and Zy Alexander at cornerback. Well, they gave you some stability and some veteran presence, but you still weren't very good. If you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, which we've gone through in the past, it was atrocious. Your safeties were the lowest graded players on your defense among your starters. Major Burns, Jordan Gilbert, again, Gilbert playing with one arm, so there's an asterisk there. In turn, you bring in 2 safeties. You bring in Tamarcus Cooley and you bring in A.J. Halsey. Sage Ryan last year had 43 tackles, and he was your best safety. Halsey had 74 tackles. He was first team all Big 12 and led the conference with 5 interceptions. Tamarcus Cooley was a freshman All-American who had 39 tackles at NC State. Started his career at Maryland, redshirt freshman year last year at NC State, had 39 tackles. And by the way, his PFF numbers all were 70 and above, whereas you had numbers in the 50s from your safeties a year ago. Dramatic improvement in talent, ability, and productivity with the 2 guys you added. And let me also remind you that Jordan Gilbert is back and now healthy. So how much better can Jordan Gilbert be after he was top 10 on your team in tackles? Gilbert was 4th on the team in tackles with 55, playing with a bum shoulder. So now you have a healthy Jordan Gilbert. You've got a more veteran Deshaun Spears, former 5-star who's a year older, who, by the way, when we were at SEC Football Media Days, I asked Chris Hilton point blank, who's a young guy on defense that turns your head? And he, without hesitation, said, Deshaun Spears. Keep an eye on that guy. Forgive me, that was Whit Weeks who said that. Whit Weeks highlighted Deshaun Spears. So Deshaun Spears, a 5-star going into his second year. Gilbert coming back healthy. And you add all Big 12 Halsey and freshman All-American Cooley to your safety room. You should be better. It is almost unfathomable to think of a possibility where you've increased talent the way you have in that room and you're not going to be improved at safety. And then there is the major, what I consider the most gigantic wild card, not just on LSU's defense, not just on LSU's team or in the SEC, but I think in all of college football. And I don't think this is hyperbole. I think Harold Perkins is the biggest wild card in college football because Harold Perkins was an All-American as a freshman. As a sophomore, matched his productivity, but on that awful 2023 LSU defense. Kept trying to play off the ball. Last year tried to play off the ball as well, and you only got him for 3 games. Now Harold Perkins is healthy and moving back to his natural position, and he's going to play the star, where Major Burns was your lowest rated defender. Like this, look at Pro Football Focus. Major Burns was LSU's lowest rated defensive player among their starters for all of 2024. Now you replace Major Burns with a healthy Harold Perkins playing in his natural habitat. This is almost effectively like signing an All-American defender out of the transfer portal. You didn't have Harold Perkins a year ago. Now he's back. He's healthy, playing his natural position. You should be dramatically improved at that spot, what was your worst spot defensively a year ago with Major Burns playing that star position. And then there's the cornerback position where Zy Alexander is gone, but Ashton Stamps returns. Remember, Zy Alexander, it took about a month last year for him to come back from that torn ACL to really be full speed. In fact, Sage Ryan started the opener against USC at cornerback. But Zy Alexander is gone, and you bring in Mansour Delane. Last year, Mansour Delane at Virginia Tech, who, by the way, Mansour Delane was a true freshman All-American 3 seasons ago. 54 tackles, 4 interceptions, 7 PBUs, 11 passes defensed. Mansour Delane in spring, my own eyes, it was obvious he's your best cornerback. So you've got Mansour Delane and a 3-year starter in Ashton Stamps at corner and a 5-star in DJ Pickett and a returning player like PJ Woodland, who's been a consistent rotational player for you as well. The point being, the numbers bear it out. You have improved at every level of the defense with what you added at defensive end to not have a dramatic fall off from Swinson and Jones. Harold Perkins getting healthy now at the star position. And then look at what you've added at safety and at cornerback. Your talent is better at every level of the defense. And now you're going into year 2 under Blake Baker. I want to remind you of this as well. If you go back to 2014. 2014 was the first year of the college football playoff. Now, then it was a 4-team college football playoff. But if you look at 2014 through 2024, and you look at the college football national championship defensive rankings and all of the national champs throughout the playoff era. 2019 LSU and 2014 Ohio State. So the first national champ of the playoff era and the greatest national champ of the playoff era, 2014 Ohio State, 2019 LSU, both allowed an identical 21.2 points per game. That's the lowest, or I guess the most points per game allowed by a national championship team in the playoff era, 21 points per game. So remember what I told you. LSU went from, in 2023, the Jaden Daniels year, the awful defense year, 29.5 points per game. Year 1 under Baker, 24.5 points per game. If this defense, another year under Baker, all the personnel we just talked about, improves by 3 points per game, they match the output of the 2019 team defensively. So the question is then, do you have confidence in LSU's offense? I'm not saying they're going to be 2019 LSU. I'm not saying they're going to average 48 a game and you're going to have Joe Burrow that throw for 60 touchdowns. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, can you match that defensive output? I'm not asking you to be the best, the fewest points per game allowed, by the way. The fewest points per game allowed was Michigan in 2023 and Georgia in 2021. Both allowed 9.5 points per game. So I'm not saying go allow 9 points per game. I'm saying, can you be a field goal better than you were a year? Or can you go from 29 to 24 to 19 points per game? If you do that, then you are well within the range of national champions of the entire playoff era of what their defensive efficiency has been. I think that is more than reasonable. You're not saying, can you go from 108th to 30th? You're saying, can you go from 61st to 30th? Can you just get that 5 more pounds of belly fat off and tone up a little bit? That's what you're asking Blake Baker's defense to do in 2025. And if they're able to do it and play complementary football for Garrett Nussmeier in this offense, which I think is going to be outstanding in 2025, then LSU very much should be. They certainly will be capable of beating any team on their schedule. They should find themselves in the college football playoff, hoping to make a run toward the program's next national championship. All right, it's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Please drop your comments. As always, greatly appreciate that. Thank you for making us your first listen. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.